people should just be mindful about some of Warren Buffett's saying. He's the best investor of all time for a reason. And what I want to at least have your audience take away is always keep in mind two of his principles. The first one is rule number 1, don't lose money. And rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Earl Yaokasin, who shares how to create wealth.
Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com.
The wealthiest person in the room is almost never the most visible. Earl Yaokasin knows this because he spent years on the wrong side of that assumption. He drove a 20-year-old Honda Civic to his kids' private school parents' events, and he parked it far away because he felt embarrassed. While watching the Bentleys pull around in front, he wanted to make sure no one saw his car. Then he started talking to those families. Almost no savings. Many of them had scholarships. Very often the grandparents were covering the tuition. So on the outside, it looked like they had money. In reality, they didn't. Earl arrived in this country in 2001. He made $7.75 an hour working in a Nordstrom's warehouse. He bought a footlong Subway, ate half for lunch and the other for dinner, while he drove 90 minutes between 2 jobs every day while building that nest egg. Eventually, he became a fiduciary wealth management firm, where he invests his own money in every position he recommends. The wealth nobody sees is usually the wealth that's actually there. Let's meet Earl and see how he did it. Welcome to Richer Soul, Earl Yaokasin. It's great to have you join us today.
Well, thank you, Rocky. It's a pleasure.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
So that's kind of how I describe my first phase of life. And during this first phase, I would categorize my growing up and my attitudes towards money as always dreaming big and saving money. And as early as first grade, I would go around my school. I would look for soda bottles and turn them in for the recycling credit, which I grew up in the Philippines, by the way. So back then, it was 50 cents in pesos. So I can't remember exactly if I needed 6 bottles or 10 bottles, but somewhere in that range, I would need to turn into the canteen so I can get myself a yummy, delicious barbecue pork skewer. Have you ever had one of those?
I have. They're very good.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Good. And then as I grew older, I figured, hey, I need to make more than just 50 cents. And so I started in second grade, selling all sorts of snappable bracelets, all different colors, sizes, shapes, and designs. And then as I grew older, I sold from CDs, concert tickets, cell phones, fireworks. So I sold a bunch of stuff. But growing up, my mom always told me, and she repeated it over and over, that I needed to spend 2 levels below my means. And one question I normally get asked is that if she wasn't there repeating that mantra over and over, would I still be frugal? And I think the answer is yes. I think I've always been frugal, and I've saved every gift that I have from Christmas or birthdays from my family and my parents. They have these red envelopes that had cash in it. I'd save those, put them in the bank, and barely have any expenses. The only expenses really I had when I was growing up was buying video games, and I didn't buy a lot. So I did save a lot of money.
And you said that was just kind of the way you were, right? It wasn't so much your mom, even though she said that to you.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it was more just innate. I didn't believe that she needed to say anything and repeatedly. But even though I'm much older today, I still hear that phrase. So I can't escape it. So it's a good reminder no matter what.
It is. And I think in America, we spend 2 levels above instead of 2 levels below. And we'll dig into that more. Was that at all cultural from the Philippines, or was that just your family and the way they looked at money?
So I'm Chinese that grew up in the Philippines. So it's more, I believe, of a Chinese trait. Normally, Filipinos don't save as much as the Chinese. I mean, generally speaking, of course. So I think culturally, my parents and my grandparents and other typical Chinese families are also taught to not spend as much as others and always save money for a rainy day.
Okay. And a lot of that is cultural. When you're in a society that believes that way, I guess there's less pull to do things differently. Although China's changing now. I don't know if you go back or you keep up. It seems like it's probably going more to a consumer society.
Yeah, it definitely has changed a lot. And if you go visit Beijing, it's a lot more advanced these days in terms of technology. And like you said, consumer spending. There are a lot of Chinese people today that like to flaunt their LVMH bags. So, so there definitely is change for sure.
And that happens. So your parents taught you about money. Did school teach you or no?
No, there's nothing really in school that taught us. It's all about math, science, and languages when I was growing up. So nothing about that. Yeah.
What's unusual, though, is you got the lessons and they stuck and you kept to them.
Yes.
Because a lot of kids rebel.
Yes, that is true. The reason for that, I mentioned one of the things in my first phase of life is about dreaming big. I've always wanted to make a lot of money. I think it's just my ambition was so large back then. My goal was to become an investment manager in the US. And so I needed to save money in order to move to the US and become self-sufficient here.
And it's a lot harder to do that in the Philippines. Even today, a lot of people in the United States use Philippines for labor because it's a fraction of the cost. And it's just the difference in the economy.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy to become an investment manager in the Philippines. Even if you had the means, the education, the connections to do it, success in the Philippine stock market is more about who you know than what you know. And you need to be one of the cronies of the leaders in order to benefit from inside information to make money over there.
It's a different game. Eventually they'll change their ways, hopefully, but you never know.
Hopefully over time.
People don't realize, and I think it's changing, but America had a very high trust society. But today that trust is kind of gone a long way south. I don't know if it's just the swinging of a pendulum or the change in culture.
It's hard to say the exact cause of why the trust has gone south. I think if I were to guess, it's a matter of promises being made by various historical leaders in the past, whether no matter what party they're from, and those promises not being met. And as disappointments happen, the trust has gone down.
Well, and it's beyond even that. Just business well, I shouldn't say that. Business never had a lot of trust going back. We think it did, but it's actually gotten more trustworthy. We don't always realize the changes that occur historically because we live in a current period and we forget what that history is. So clearly you dreamed big, you made it, you got to America, and you became a financial advisor. How did that all work out for you?
Yeah, so that's the second phase, I guess, of my life, which is all about working super hard and really investing my money well. So in terms of working hard, I had to, even though I graduated from the best business school in the Philippines, arguably, and I graduated with on the dean's list on my senior year, I had to work from the ground up. I started working at a Nordstrom warehouse for minimum wage, doing data entry. And as you can imagine, it's mind-numbing, boring stuff. But I made it into a game where every day I come in, I am going to beat my previous day's record of speed and accuracy in terms of entering stuff. And after just 2 weeks, everybody was saying, who is this new guy that's like doing significantly better than people that are years on the job? And, from there, because minimum wage wasn't enough to really make myself really super comfortable, I decided to move jobs and work for an appraisal company. And even then, so my salary in 2001 went from $7.75 an hour to $10 an hour, and I still wasn't satisfied. So I worked a second job working as a credit card collector for Bank of America. And yeah, from your reaction, you would think that would be a horrible job, but similar to my data entry position, I just changed my mindset. And so when everybody around me at the call center was just lying to people, threatening, customers, hey, pay me, and making things up so that they can pay. And what I did was just did the opposite of what everybody did. I was just super nice to everybody that I talked to. I was just listening to them, listening to their story. And one thing I did differently is that because they would start opening up to me, and then they would tell me, hey, Earl, my paycheck actually arrives on this day. And so I would make a note of everybody's whose paychecks are coming at whatever day. And then on that day, I would just call them and they would make the payment. And so I was actually really successful, at that job. But in terms of the hard work, are you familiar with some cities in Southern California, Rocky?
Some of them.
Okay, so there's this place called Rancho Cucamonga, east of downtown Los Angeles. And so that's where I lived. Then my first job was in Pomona. It's about a 30-minute drive if there was no traffic. And then my second job with Bank of America was in Pasadena, which is usually another 20 minutes further away if there was no traffic. And again, if. So I did that for more than a year, just driving like crazy, working like a madman. And what I would do is for lunch, I would eat half of a $5 Subway footlong. And then for dinner, I would eat the other half. And that way, I would save so much money every month that I am able to start creating a nest egg for investing my money in stocks eventually. I can pause here to see if you have any questions before I get to the investing part.
No, but it's those basic habits, right? You figured out how to survive, eat relatively well without spending a fortune. Like, I'm always amazed at how people who have low incomes spend incredible amounts of money on convenience. And I'm like, I don't know how you afford that. If you would just do some basic financial sense, you would be so far ahead. And yet it's not taught, or it's not celebrated, nor is it encouraged.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. But for example, even until today, I hate paying for convenience. So I would park far, and sometimes in certain cases, I've gone to the extreme, and my wife got upset one time. But I would park far just to avoid paying for parking. I hate paying for parking. If I could do certain things, for myself, even though I could pay others to do it, I mean, as long as it's something that I know I can do, I would do it myself. And yeah, it's just not trying to spend as much money as possible is my daily goal. But kind of going back to one of our conversations before the call, frugality is not like not spending any money at all. So for example, one of the things that I do with my money today is I prioritize making sure that I spend as much money as possible for my kids' growth. So I send them to the best private schools in the area. I definitely spend a lot of money on their speech and debate activities and other kind of extracurricular activities as well, because I want them to be well-rounded adults and well-equipped adults when they grow older.
And that's important. And let's talk about frugality now. You can buy cheap stuff and keep buying cheap stuff, or you can buy good quality stuff and it will last a lot longer. You can also buy good quality stuff on sale.
Yeah.
And it's still going to last the same as the good quality stuff not on sale. And depending on the particular market or the product, there are significant discounts to be had. And I guess people just aren't taught to negotiate.
Yeah.
And I've negotiated with major retailers. I mean, we were always negotiating on any kind of a large price. I've negotiated with Lowe's and Home Depot. And part of it is also timing. Like we're in springtime now, right? Summer's coming around. I'm not going to go negotiate a lawnmower with them today because they're going to laugh at me. But if they got a snowblower sitting there in the last month or so, they're going to negotiate on that snowblower because they want it off their floor.
Yeah.
And so those are the types of things that are possible out there. I think people get confused between frugal and cheap. And cheap ends up costing more money.
Yeah.
Cheap also is probably not fun.
Yeah.
But frugal actually allows you to have a pretty good life. And it also teaches you, I think, to be intentional on what you spend it on. So take your example. You intentionally spend on a high quality education, but you made that decision. You didn't say, I'm just going to spend this and spend that. It was much
very
more
intentional.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of business owners. They have the same problem. They are not frugal in their business. And when you start to realize how much money you have to earn to pay for stuff and how much time it takes you to earn that money, you really start to understand where that is.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that you touched on earlier was that cheap is different than being frugal. So one of the early lessons I learned from myself, and this was back when the iPhone was in its early stages. So I was being cheap and not upgrading to an iPhone or not buying an iPad or to make my quality of life better, because I read a lot. I listen to a lot of audiobooks as well. And I was just saying, I have this flip phone. Why would I pay X number of dollars for that? And then eventually I gave in, and then I realized my mistake. My mistake was, it did cost more, but guess what? I get to do more. I am more productive. I get to learn more, and all that money is worth it. And one of the things is that I wish I actually spent that money earlier. So in terms of quality of life upgrades, I actually recommend people that they don't wait, because you can improve your life much sooner.
It's funny. I learned that a couple years ago. We don't travel a ton. We travel a little bit, and you can pay for, with the credit cards, you can get access to the airline lounges. And I was always like, this isn't worth it. We don't travel enough, this, that. And then one time we were flying cross country, and our lunch bill was $250. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And after that, I made the moment, I'm going to pay for the airline lounge. And It was a lot. I mean, it was much more than the 250, but what I found is I would never go back from that anymore. And it's just worth it for the peace of mind. You get to sit in more quiet, and the food is there, and so you're not just wasting money in the airports where they charge you 4 times what everybody else charges. And so it worked out. But there's a lot of that. Sometimes I bought equipment that was of a lower spec or a lower quality, only to go, oh, I need the higher quality now. So the first part's wasted.
Yeah.
But you have to, how do you figure out when is the right time to say yes versus no to something like that?
I guess a great example would be cars, right? So a lot of people, almost everybody owns a car. And when you own a car, the biggest question that you want to ask is, how much does it cost if I keep this old car, right? I have maintenance costs to pay. But if I buy a new car, that's a big chunk of change as well. So it's always about the costs that you are paying today versus the costs that you are paying to upgrade. And so, for example, in the car example, if you are driving a very old car and it looks like you're going to have to spend $5,000 in terms of repairs, this year, and most likely there's probably more repairs, in the early years after that, you might as well buy a $10,000, higher quality car that's newer, that has less problems. So even though you are probably spending double than what you're going to pay year one, over the next 5 years, you're probably going to save more money, because then you're only prolonging the inevitable. And then past year one, you probably still have to repair the car some more. So it's replacement costs versus the ongoing costs, which is, kind of my decision factor.
How do you decide luxury car versus average car?
Yeah. So that one, I can only speak personally. So I have a great story here. So for the longest time, I drove a Honda Civic. I owned my Honda Civic for more than 20 years. And so my kids go to private school, as I mentioned earlier. And back then, when my kids were younger and we were new to the school and everyone was driving a luxury car, I felt a little bit, embarrassed to drive my car to those schools, because everybody else is driving these luxury cars. I would intentionally park far when there was a parent party or something like that. But eventually, I thought it was. After a few years, I thought it was kind of like a badge of honor, because I found out, because some people talk to me, is that there are a lot of people or families in those schools that they seem to have a lot of money, but they actually don't save a lot of money. And in terms of luxury car versus just like a Honda, like a reliable car, it doesn't have to be Honda. Anything reliable that's not expensive. A car really only gets you from point A to point B. Yes, maybe the seats, if you have a bad back or something like that would matter. But other than that, everything else, in my opinion, is, a nice to have. And it's all about your image, right? So if you, for example, are a multimillionaire with a lot of savings, by all means, spend on a luxury car. You earned your money. You if you want to, you can do it. But if you are an average person, middle income class person, you should not be spending on something to impress other people. And Dave Ramsey has this saying, I'm sure you've heard of it, right? We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. So unless you have a lot of savings and a lot of income, just stick with the regular car.
I will say you'd be shocked at how many people in private schools are scholarship financial aid. Grandparents are paying the bill.
Yeah.
Not the parents. And you don't really realize that because people are living a lifestyle they really can't afford. And that happens more often than you can imagine.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Yes.
Well, as a financial advisor, you get to see behind the scenes, just like I get to see behind the scenes. So I get it.
Yes.
But those who don't see behind the scenes have no clue what's really going on. And once you do, you're like, interesting. It's not all what you thought it was. This episode of Richer Soul is sponsored by the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you're a business owner who wants to scale and grow, increase profits, or want to have strategic conversations around your financials, then check out the podcast. You'll learn how to work less, increase cash flow, increase profits, and build reserves to help you weather storms. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must-listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So, one of the things that you talk about is this cultural difference. Asians, and I'm an Asian too, have very different ways of looking at money and using money and building not just wealth for themselves, but more generational wealth. I'd love to hear what you've seen.
Yeah, definitely. So there are two key characteristics or differences between Asians and non-Asians when it comes to money. But before I get into that, I just want to be, as sensitive as possible. That saying that there's no culture that is perfect, just like no person's perfect. There are positives and negatives for every culture, and I can only make generalizations. Obviously, there are many exceptions to the rules. So with that out of the way, the first thing obviously is that Asians in general tend to be more frugal than non-Asians. And part of it is the upbringing, the societal pressure, and people just seeing what other people, do and buy and spend money on. What I would say is that sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, that Asians take their frugality too far. They would not flush toilet bowls, which is, very unsanitary. And they won't change shoes even though it's probably time to change the shoes just for, health reasons, and they still won't change it. So things like that. Some Asians really take it too far. Another difference between Asians and non-Asians is the way they invest and think about the next generation. So Asians in general, when they invest, they plan, okay, how much money am I going to leave my kids and grandkids? I want to grow my nest egg so that when I pass it on, then they would have, enough money to survive and thrive for a generation or two. But most non-Asians that I generally deal with, we create retirement plans. And what I see in the retirement plans is they actually want to have as little as possible and enjoy their retirement as little as possible. And I mean, as much as possible, and leave as little as possible to their kids, because they think that, my kids should be independent. They should raise save their own money, only spend the money that they've earned. So it's a bit of a different mindset there. And then the last thing that I see in terms of Asians and non-Asians is the way they approach investing in general. So a lot of Asians like to gamble. They like to go to the casino, and they view the stock market as a casino. So these are Asians. But non-Asians in general actually are more open to leaving their stock investments untouched for decades. And so it's actually harder for me as a long-term value investor to educate clients that I have from Asia about, hey, we're going to invest in this stock. We're going to hold it for 5 to 10 years. We're not going to touch it as much as possible. And they're like, why shouldn't we sell if the price is up? But it's easier for me to explain these concepts to, Americans in general.
Let's talk about inheritance, because one of the issues I think that comes up, and the stats prove it out, in the US, most inheritances disappear extremely quickly. I think it's like 18 months, which is about the same as most lottery winnings. The kids don't hold on to it. They blow it. And if that's what you see, then why bother saving for someone else to blow it?
Yeah. And And by the way, that's true for business, family businesses too. You see it get passed to the second generation and the business doesn't do well anymore. And the reason why the next generation usually blows that money or blows the business is that at home there is no teaching of financial concept. It's like money is a taboo. Talking about finances is a taboo. So on my dinner table, we actually talk about money and investing a lot. And that's one of the things that I make sure that my kids understand and grow up, because I can't expect their school to teach them. And in fact, um, I think schools in general don't do enough to even private schools, even though there are some money lessons that my daughters have taken, but it's only like super short and not in depth. And so it's the education in terms of just handling money in schools is not enough. And so the parents need to do their jobs and teach their kids in order how to manage money.
But most parents probably don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah, because they didn't grow up with parents that taught them.
Correct.
And that's where they need someone like you, Rocky, or someone like a financial advisor to help them understand money themselves in order to pass that along to their kids. And really, it's hard to tell your kids, and kids are really smart, right? So if you are just not, you don't have any financial discipline, and you're telling your kids, hey, save money, that's going to go one ear and out the other ear.
No, that's very true. Kids listen to what you do, not what you say. And so if the parents aren't investing, aren't being reasonably frugal or doing those types of things, then that's what happens. The other thing that I've noticed generationally, I think, when we grew up, we used dollar bills. And when you had $100 bill, it meant something. And you really didn't like letting go of them. But today, when everything's done on tap your phone, there's no emotional connection, whether I spend $2.50 on a soda or $2,500 on something else. And so I think they lose that ability to even understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. When my girls were really young, it's like, dad just uses a credit card to pay for stuff. That's it. It's like this magic money grows on trees and you can just use this card to pay for stuff. And I had to definitely teach them that that's not the case. And one of the things that I actually recommend for folks, and even with technology today, so technology today, in terms of people who try to budget, everything's automated. You download your bank account transactions, your credit card transaction comes online. It's just easy to see. I actually recommend for people, and I do this, and I've done it since 1997. For every single transaction I make, I manually enter it on Quicken or QuickBooks, whichever software you want to use. And the reason for that is that it's like, okay, you are intentionally understanding where every cent you spent actually went. It's not like, you just see this Rolodex or like screen or lines and, okay, these are all my transactions. That's it. No, you have to type, okay, I spent this much money for gas. I spent this much money at a restaurant. And then every time you type, it's a conscious decision that, hey, I understood that I spend this much money for this purpose. And being intentional about your expenses is the key to actually spending less.
I have over 30 years of Quicken data. My file's pretty big.
Yeah.
I'm less today than I ever was, but I still, everything gets categorized into what it is.
Yeah.
And I want to know where my money went. And then once a year, we look at it and say, are we happy with the way things ran? Or are we not happy? And what do we want to change? And how do we want to change it? It also brings awareness of, whoa, we just spent a bunch of money on these different things. I didn't realize we spent so much. So it brings that awareness back. When you're dealing with the kids, how do you teach them that balance? Because everywhere they look, they're getting enticed to buy stuff. And their friends are enticing them. And then they're much more in that. And yet you kind of want to show them how to be frugal. How have you been able to do that?
Yeah, I can only speak for my family. But in terms of one thing you said earlier, kids notice what you do, not what you say. And so they see that my wife and I do not shop at all in terms of traveling. One of our things is that we do not take what I call Facebook share worthy vacations. So, so they see every day we don't buy luxury goods. We try to just not spend. We don't go to Disneyland. Many times sometimes we go to Disneyland 0 times in a year. Many years are like that. So we just try to find cheaper alternatives to entertain ourselves, reading books, playing board games, watching Netflix, taking a walk in the park, exercising, playing badminton, something like that. So they see what we do day to day, and it becomes a routine. And so when they are with their friends and they see these extravagant luxury, clothes like Ralph Lauren or these cosmetics that are bought from Sephora, things like that, they don't follow suit because they're used to seeing mom and dad not spend for this kind of stuff. And we talk to them during dinner time. That helps a lot too.
There are a lot of very nice vacations you can have without spending a lot of money. And it's not that hard. And sometimes it's just timing when in the year you go or some of the places. But it really isn't that hard to be able to go to nice places and still be able to do it. And I think that's one of the things people just don't realize how to do that. And the fact that you can do that, when my kids were young, we went to Disney a lot, and we went to Disney for 2 weeks at a time because it's changed. But back then, a 3-day ticket and a 10-day ticket, there was hardly any price differential. So why not go for 10 days? Why?
Yeah, that makes
I've
sense.
already paid the airfare. I'm here. I already bought most of the ticket. Buy the other 7 days and have fun. So we were able to do things like that, as well as look for and find deals and opportunities.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of opportunities out there if you look, or if you ask, or you find different ways to do this stuff. And I think that's the problem. People don't even know how to look. They've never been taught how to comparison shop. They've never been taught how to figure out these different types of things.
Yeah, and negotiation too. So one of the things that I taught my kids is I brought them to the dealership as I had to eventually replace my 20-year-old car, is that, so I brought them to the dealership and then I told them, okay, this is how you negotiate. And it's only when you've talked to multiple senior managers in the dealership and you're saying, you're walking away, thank you for your business, I think I'm going away now, and I'm shaking their hand and I'm leaving, and then they come up with, and then they agree to my terms, is that then that's when you got the best deal. Not when you've negotiated with the first person you talk to, but the third person, and once you've threatened to walk away. So they've seen it firsthand, So it's like you said, unfortunately, you need to, some people don't know how, and it's the parents' job to teach them, or it's a coach's job, it's a financial advisor's job to help people learn how to manage money better.
Do you find most financial advisors do that?
No, and I've been around other financial advisors many times throughout my career in different companies, and what I can tell you is that the average financial advisor is actually also probably in debt or just breaking even. So one of the things I tell people is that you want to take advice from people who actually walk the walk, have actual money, and have invested, invest their money like their clients' money like their own. And you don't want to work with someone who's kind of just a relationship manager, who has not saved a lot of money themselves, and is just good at talking.
That was one of the biggest ahas for me, was once you start to get behind the scenes and hear the conversations and see the things that people are talking about, it's like, oh, you don't understand money at all, and yet you're in that financial advisor place. And I think that's the other problem for a lot of people is knowing who to trust, because in a world of marketing, people tend to follow the person who has the best marketing, not the person who's the best at what they do.
That's correct.
And those are two very, very different things. And so you've got to figure that out and make sure that you are listening to the right people. And yes,
Absolutely.
it's shocking how many financial advisors are not. Even the ones making a lot of money aren't necessarily that
Yeah.
well off.
Yeah, because they spend so much. Yeah, they buy these fancy cars because they need to show off to their clients that, hey, I make a lot of money, but that means they don't save a lot of money. Yeah.
But clients, I don't think clients really care. Nobody says, oh, I went with my financial advisor because, he's got a Mercedes or a whatever.
I think you'd be surprised. I know a lot of people that have attracted, like, for example, they drive a Bentley, like this financial advisor drives a Bentley. Okay, he drives somewhere, let's say to a golf course or something, and then he meets strangers, and then the strangers see his car. Oh, this guy must be doing well. And then they'd be willing to at least talk to him. And then of course, after that, it depends. But at least having these superficial things can open the door for some financial advisors.
Should we buy Bentleys?
No.
I was looking at, they've gone up a lot. I thought maybe if one goes on sale, I'll have to think about it. The next time we have a recession, I'm guessing that there will be a sale on Bentleys, and that'll be the time to look at it. The problem isn't the car itself as well. It's the service costs are through the roof. And that's the bigger problem, is the constant upkeep and whether or not they actually turn on every time you get into them.
And the insurance too.
I haven't even looked at the cost of insurance. That has got to be a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny because some of the people that America looks up to, like Elon Musk and Warren Buffett, are actually quite frugal.
Yeah.
In the way that they live their lives. Elon Musk in business will constantly look to cut every single penny that he can do. And it's like, there's a reason his companies do well and that he does well, is because he's willing to do that. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people aren't.
And just to add to the list, right? You have Sam Walton, you have Jeff Bezos. There's a reason why companies that are very mindful of how they spend. Again, cheap is not the same as frugal, because you need to spend on some things, but on those things that you spend, making sure that they are in the right areas and they're being spent efficiently. But generally speaking, they're the best companies that make a lot of money. They are very efficient in their spending.
They are. And that's what it comes down to. Spend efficiently, intelligently, and look after what it is that you're going to do.
Yeah.
You're also in the financial world. We're in weird times, is what I like to call it.
Yeah.
It's been 18, 19 years since we've had a downturn of any meaningful thing.
Yeah.
Yet there also seems like with inflation coming back, which most people, unless they're in their late 60s, probably don't even remember inflation and how long it kept going before it finally got tamed. What are you kind of seeing out there with all these different things going on? And also, it seems like there's a shift in the recovery of the economy, that a small group of people have the money and a lot of people are kind of struggling.
Yeah. Like you said, there's a lot of weird things that's happening right now. So let me touch on them one by one. You've mentioned a lot there. Let's tackle inflation first. So historically, inflation has gone in waves of 3, meaning the first wave is a little smaller, the second wave is taller, and then the third wave is even taller. So historically, it comes in 3. That's happened in the early 1900s. Obviously, that happened in the 1970s. And just for folks to understand, inflation was at least 10 years present in the 70s. And in 2022, we actually had an inflation spike. So that is kind of like wave 1. And what I've been warning people is that wave 2, which could be years from now, could be even worse than 2022 if it follows historical patterns. And the reason why that could happen, and it's the same reason why we haven't had a meaningful recession in 18 years, which is, it's the same. It's because of stimulus. And there are many forms of stimulus. One is just low interest rates for a very long time, from 2008 until 2021. So that's a very long time to keep interest rates low. The second thing is money supply is much higher compared to the long-term averages. That's because of all the money printing done by the Federal Reserve, not only in the US, but also around the world. And then thirdly, a lot of fiscal stimulus. And fiscal stimulus comes in many different forms, but maybe the two most relatable, most popular forms of fiscal stimulus are, actually, we'll make it three. One is just lower taxes in general. Number two is just direct stimulus checks from the government, as an example, during COVID. And then thirdly is just government spending. And most people don't understand that, for example, in 2024, the government spent 6.5% more as a percent of GDP, more than what it made in 2024. In last year, it was about 7%. And this year, it's probably going to be even more than that. And the only times we've spent this much money, and when I say we, the US government, the only times they've spent this much money as a percentage of GDP is during the financial crisis and during the depths of COVID. So, in other words, currently, the government is spending as if we are already in a recession to prevent a recession. And then the third thing, then another thing you mentioned was a select few are getting, are getting the profits, are doing well. And that's what we call the K-shaped economy. And so many of the rich people are continuing to spend money like they've always done. They've continued to get richer as the stock market has continued to go up. Unfortunately, many of the average middle income class family, lower income class family, life is harder because of inflation. A carton of eggs today is much more expensive than a carton of eggs 10 years ago. Gas prices obviously much higher. Medical expenses so much higher as well. And who gets squeezed? Unfortunately, the people who earn less money. So for the middle and lower income class families, it's actually much harder today. And in terms of the business world, it's also bifurcated, where you've got a lot of the people benefiting from AI spending doing well. For example, the semiconductor chip companies like NVIDIA. But a lot of the older companies, like in some older traditional industrial companies, they're having a harder time. And if you look at GDP last year would be close to 0% if you took out AI spending. So that just gives you a picture of some of the kind of mirages that are happening today.
There's a lot of reports coming out from companies that AI spending is producing very little results, and that most of the layoffs are not actually AI related. They're related to the fact that during COVID, we overhired. And so they need to get rid of all of the overhiring. And so it's just a normal adjustment. But of course, we blame it on something, and AI is a good place to blame it on at the moment. And so,
yeah. At the same time, the CEOs, they want their stocks to continue moving higher. And so they have to make more money in a much more difficult environment. And the only way for many companies to do that is to lay off workers.
Cut costs. Yes. I mean, that's one way. You can only cut so many costs. Correct. But I will say most companies they suffer from a non-frugality problem. They waste a lot of money throughout the organizations because, and I say this to small business owners, if your people don't know how to manage their finances, how do you trust them to manage yours, meaning the business? And that's a problem. And so I think for businesses, teaching people about money will help the business make more money because people won't just waste it. Yeah. And that seems to be a constant thing these days, is across all boards.
Yeah, you can definitely see a lot of companies. For example, when a great example would be the acquisition of Warner Brothers, right? So there was this big tug of war between Netflix and I think it was Paramount, right? So it's you can see the ridiculousness of how far some companies would go and overpay for something, and that's one example of the non-frugality of companies today.
And in that they do. Again, more often than not, it's not their money. So there's no skin in the game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and you see that when the business goes south, the people, the CEOs, they still retain all that money they got paid. I mean, they some clauses. Oh, they out of the 50 million, hey, you have to pay back $1 million. So what? So they don't. There is no skin in the game, like you said, and that is true for many financial advisors as well. Is that it's like they make investment recommendations, but they're not the ones who researched it. They don't put any money towards it. And in fact, there's this study done by Morningstar. Out of the tens of thousands of funds, less than half of managers actually have even $1 invested in their own fund. So that's pretty egregious.
It is. It's a big thing to have skin in the game. And
Yeah.
if you want someone to invest money in it, you should as well. So I think that's a big part of it. Is there anything that we should have touched on that we didn't get a chance to?
Yeah, I would say that people should just be mindful about some of Warren Buffett's saying. He's the best investor of all time for a reason. And what I want to at least have your audience take away is always keep in mind two of his principles. The first one is rule number one, don't lose money. And rule number two, don't forget rule number one. So that's the first principle. And then the second principle is when everyone is greedy, be fearful. When everyone is fearful, be greedy. And if you can abide by those two principles in terms of your investing, when you're investing things, you will at least do okay.
You will. And Warren's done well. Every so often they make fun of him, and yet he just keeps winning. So
Yeah.
it's a long game. And I think that's what people don't realize. You show up, you play the long game, you don't lose, things will compound unbelievably well, especially if you live into your 90s.
Yeah. That's why the turtle wins the race.
Very, very true.
It's time to learn the secrets of life.
What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
The first step is success is personal. It's not about you need to be the richest or you need to be the best. It's intrinsic. For some people, success could be just living an average life, and that could be success. So the first step is really defining what success to me means to you, and don't let other people influence what that goal is.
Otherwise, you'll be living someone else's success and not yours, and then you're
That's
not happy
correct.
anyway.
Yeah.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Really wish I learned this sooner because I would have made so much more money. One of the mistakes that I've made over and over in the early part of my investing career was selling stocks when they were above what I thought their value was. And there's a reason why great companies can surprise you to the upside more than you'd ever think. They'd invent a new product, or they just continued more efficiency, higher profit margins, expansions, geography, things like that. So if you are invested in a fantastic company and it's not egregiously expensive, don't sell it. And if I listened to that advice earlier in my career, I'd be so much richer.
You know, it's funny when the whole thing with Iran went down, I was going to buy oil, and I didn't because it had already popped $10 or $15. And I said, oh, it already went up $15. And it's the mistake I always make. I'm not going to buy it. Well, since then it's doubled. Oops. When things run, they run. Hop on and go for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
I would say that the best time to invest is when stocks are going down and not when they're going up. So when my daughter was 8, and this applies to any 18-year-old, today, right? Most young investors, when they make an investment, they cheer, hey, the market's up, our investments are up, we're doing great. Actually, you are young, you have a lifetime of income and savings ahead of you. I mean, first thing, you need to save money. But with that savings that you have, you actually want the stock market to go down because you get to buy things cheaper. It's kind of like, hey, you need to go to the gas station every week. Do you want higher prices or lower prices? And if you say higher prices, you're crazy. So if you're going to be investing all your life, right? You want stock prices to go down because you keep adding money at cheaper prices. And eventually, even though you're rooting for it to go down, it will go up by itself.
And that's very true. I've been waiting for the next recession simply so I can buy a lot of stuff very cheap.
Yeah.
And eventually it will come, but it never does when I expect it to.
No one knows when it will happen.
If people would like to learn more about you and your services, how do they find you?
Yeah, so we created a specific URL for your audience. It's mywealtharch/richer soul. So let me just spell that for your listeners. mywealtharch.com/richer soul. And on that URL, you can subscribe to our investment update newsletter for free for 30 days. In those 30 days, you'll get anything that I trade, you will know within a few minutes. And as well, on that page, you can learn more about our company, how we're different from other companies, as well as schedule a meeting with me.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to put that in the notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Earl talked about success being personal. The first step is defining what it means for you and not letting someone else and their car define what you are and what you want. The Civic wasn't a failure. The Civic was a choice, and it compounded massively. Sure, when you can stroke the check for the Bentley, go get it. There's one question from this episode I keep returning to. If no one could see how you spent your money, would you spend it differently? That gap between your answer and your actual behavior, that's where the work is. Who cares about the Joneses? They don't like you. You don't like them. Why are you trying to impress them? I hope the episode landed. Think about how you build wealth. Frugal is kind of the way it is done. Look at some of the richest people in the world. They're actually pretty frugal. Do you know someone who needs to hear this message? Do us both a favor, share the episode with them. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.